Hey, how you doing there, my dear friends? It's Dan. I'm live, coming at you live from beautiful, beautiful Oak Lawn, Illinois. Oak Lawn, a land where you can see some of the most lovely asphalt that you've ever witnessed in your life. Good to see you. Hey, you know what? Here, I was thinking about something. A while ago, this is going back a few years, a while ago I was talking with someone and he confessed some things. I'm a minister, I'm a pastor. He confessed some things from his life, some problems, some shortcomings, failures from his past, sins from his past, and told me these were a big deal. Big problems, big sins, and he told me some things, and frankly, he was right. They were not good things. He was right. He had made some very serious mistakes. That was very true. But you know what? I discovered something, and I've seen this before a few times as I'm counseling and talking to people. I actually didn't have to make sure he understood just how bad these issues were. I didn't have to hammer him over the head and reinforce what a terrible scoundrel he had been. He already knew that. He knew. In fact, he was already. I was kind of like, had to tell him, hey, ease up on yourself. He was already being harder on himself than I would ever be. So we talked, and in the course of our conversation, he seemed to indicate that he felt like he had messed up to such a degree. In his case, he'd messed up so much that he thought he probably had disqualified himself from ever being used by God in a significant way now or in the future. Like he knew he could still be saved by God. Because of the power of God's grace and forgiveness and the sufficient work of Jesus, he was able to get that part, but he doubted if he could do anything important or meaningful for God because, it just, come on. The errors in his mind, the errors of his past were just too big, and God probably couldn't use someone like him, not like him. And oh man, I'm telling you, I was so glad that I could actually explain to him that he was not disqualified. No. Not disqualified. I told him some of the names of people from the Bible who had messed up. He'd heard these names before, but I reminded him some people who, and these are people who are a lot of times thought of as heroes from the Bible, and yet they had some very profound failures, serious moral failures, some of these people. People like Moses and Noah, and Samson and David, who the Bible describes as a man after God's own heart, and yet we know he had terrible moral failures. Terrible. People like Peter, who was one of Jesus' closest disciples, walked and did ministry with Jesus on planet Earth, yet he made some bad mistakes. People like Paul, who wrote a sizable portion of the New Testament. God worked through these people in spite of their problems and their past sins and their flaws. And see, here's the thing. God has always worked. He always has worked through flawed people. Always. Actually, that's the only kind of people he has to work with, right? Right? Flawed people are the only ones God has to work with. My dear friends, God can use you. He can work through you. God can. In powerful ways, he can do that. And you know what? In a sense, it's because it's not about you and what you've done and the things and what you've been and the mistakes you've made in the past. I know that weighs heavy, but you can be forgiven. But when God works, it's about God. It's about God and who he is and what he's done. And it's about how God's power, not our power, it's about how God's power can be unleashed even in punks like you and punks like me.